morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Gentex Multimedia presentation on this 16th day of September, this 2020. And let's take a very quick look at what's making news today. New South Wales elective surgery wait list blows out. Very concerning infection outbreak after exposure of rare flesh-eating bacteria. Next up, 5 dead, 175 infected after COVID-19 wedding disaster. Man dies after falling from world's tallest swing ride. Told you not to go on that. And last up, new item of interest identified in case of missing Belgian backpacker. But first, let's take a look at the weather for today on this wonderful 16th day of September 2020, a day that will go down in history. As we know, 2020 is making that kind of noise. With that, let's welcome to Dilraj.
Good morning, everyone. Weather forecast for rest of today will be maximum 24 degree. Brisbane area is partly cloudy with medium chances of rain in the morning and early afternoon. Light winds becoming east to northeasterly 15 to 20 km per hour in the early afternoon, then becoming light in the evening. Fire danger is low to moderate and sun protection is recommended till 2:50 p.m. and UV index is predicted to reach 8, that is very high. So till tomorrow, stay safe and have a good day.
Thank you very much, Dilraj. And as has been said, that sun protection is recommended. This is Queensland, even though it might not feel like that, but it is recommended that you always go and get that sun protection. Well, right now let's take a look at what are the numbers for today. So looking at the cases, total cases in Queensland is 1,150 with 1,111. So that's a lot of ones there, 1111. Recovery, which is good, and the deaths are 6. Now, one of the news items that we will look at later in the news today is the numbers that we are talking about. And the point to note there is this is what has been recorded or identified. Please note that there have been more cases which have not come forward or which have not been identified. So these are what have been officially identified and recorded. So the worldwide 29.4 million. So 29.4 million and recovery at 19.9 million, 931 deaths worldwide. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, update on Gentex Multimedia. Let's take a look at the headlines for today.
Tonight, metropolitan Melbourne will be the only part of the country still facing these tough coronavirus restrictions, with regional Victoria set to open up. Businesses in regional areas are preparing to reopen, with residents permitted to dine at restaurants and socialise outdoors. Major roads around Melbourne will be strictly policed to prevent city dwellers trying to escape.
A Melbourne cafe owner who says her business has been left struggling because of the tough lockdown measures has launched a legal bid to overturn the curfew. Michelle Liao has launched action in the Supreme Court calling for the curfew to be declared unlawful, claiming it breaches her human rights. Mr. Liao says he is a member of the Liberal Party and is seeking pre-selection in the state seat of Nepean.
The World Health Organisation says schools should only close as a last resort, as research shows half of students around the world have still not returned to the classroom. UNICEF says 872 million children in 51 countries are still unable to go to school, and 1 in 4 countries are yet to say when they'll reopen. The WHO says adults must be willing to trade off restrictions to allow kids to return to school.
And Donald Trump is predicting a new dawn for the Middle East with the signing of diplomatic agreements between Israel and the United Arab Emirates as well as Bahrain. The president presided over a ceremony at the White House overnight where leaders signed agreements to normalise relations. Palestinians have protested against the deal.
And that's the headlines for today, and it is wonderful to see that some kind of agreement is being reached there. Well, right now, let's take a look at what's happening right here in Queensland. This is the latest from today as we join with the Minister. So, the latest update here from Queensland.
I'll give the Queensland COVID update. I'll also make some announcements about hospitals here in the Mackay Hospital and Health Service. Then we can hear
Coming
from
live to you from
our
Mackay.
local member, fantastic local member, Julianne Gilbert, and hopefully our future local members, our candidates for Burdekin and Morani. Then I'm happy to take questions on any of those topics, of course. Today we can confirm that there are no further cases of COVID-19 in Queensland. I want to put that into a little bit of context. That means that we have now had just one new case in the last 4 days. We've had 3 0 days in the last 4 days, and it's now more than 4 days since we've had any cases related to the clusters in the southeast. We've had 4 cases over the last 5 days, all of those in quarantine, and just 5 cases over the last 7 days, which is very promising. The 3 days prior to that, we had 12 cases, mostly related to those clusters. And so that's designed to give you just a sense of how we are getting on top of those clusters, particularly in the south side of Brisbane and the Ipswich area. It's very, very good work, and I'd like to congratulate particularly the staff of the Ipswich Hospital and the West Moreton and Metro South Public Health Units, as well as everyone else involved in that effort, from our Chief Health Officer right throughout the teams. While we also see other states, particularly New South Wales and Victoria, continuing to make progress, sadly, more people lost their lives to COVID-19 in Victoria in the last 24 hours than have in the entire year here in Queensland. Tragically, 8 deaths in Victoria in the last 24 hours compared to 6 in Queensland all up. Our total number of cases now sits at 1,149, and I'm really pleased to report that we've seen a rebound in that testing rate. Earlier in the week, we indicated concern about the drop-off in the number of people getting tested. In the last testing period, I can confirm we tested 6,424 people, back within that 5,000 to 10,000 range in which we hope to be testing to ensure that we aren't missing any community transmission. It's now 17 days since those confirmed cases on the Gold Coast, and we've had no further cases on the Gold Coast, nor have we had any contact tracing locations in the Darling Downs region, and that means that we can now lift the additional restrictions that were applied to the Gold Coast Hospital and Health Service District and the Darling Downs Hospital and Health Service District. That includes the restrictions on gatherings. They'll now be able to have gatherings of up to 30. It includes the restrictions on visitors to aged care and to hospitals. That includes lifting the restrictions on visitors in aged care and in hospitals in both the Gold Coast and Darling Downs regions. It also includes lifting the additional protective equipment requirements that we were applying in those hospitals, although of course decisions about PPE will be made at a hospital level and a clinician level as appropriate. In my briefing this morning with the Chief Health Officer, she indicated that she had received further genome sequencing of all of the cases related to the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre, the West Moreton Health Service and the Correctional Academy, and that all of them are confirmed to be very, very closely related. Yesterday here in Mackay, as you all know, we farewelled a Mackay great, a Labor legend, a former deputy leader of the State Parliamentary Labor Party in Tim Mulherron. And in Tim's final years, and throughout his career, but particularly in his final years, he loved leading the Mackay Hospital and Health Service. His contribution here was enormous, and you can see it in the staff and the built infrastructure in our hospitals right across the health service. And he'd been working with us on our plans for the future of our hospitals in the Mackay Hospital and Health Service. I've spoken a lot about how building and expanding our hospitals is a crucial part not just of our health response to COVID, but also our economic response, creating jobs right across the state. And that's why I'm really pleased to be making this announcement, which really builds on Tim's legacy of health services here in the Mackay region. It's something.
So that's that announcement there in Mackay region with the new hospital. That is so wonderful to see because we need more of this kind of infrastructure. And when funds are being used for this kind of infrastructure, and facilities, that is wonderful to see. Well, right now it's time for the weekly real estate update with GlobeNet Realty, and presented by Usha Chandra, the principal of GlobeNet Realty. With that, let's welcome to the show Usha Chandra from GlobeNet Realty.
Good morning, Umesh, and good morning to all our listeners. Thank you for having me on the show again.
Wonderful to have you on the show. And as we now looking at real estate, first of all, let's take a very quick look at last week's activities. When we look at last week's activities, first off, let's look at sales. So what's been happening in the sales area?
In the sales area, Sydney market has gone a little bit up. The number of sales was 1,607. The median price was $785,000. Melbourne market has gone down. The sale number was 754 sales, and the median price has gone down as well, $631,000. Brisbane market, the market has picked up by 120 more properties, and the median price has gone up by $5,000. So last week's median price was $500,000, and this week's median price has gone $505,000. So that shows a good increase, and the activity has gone up in Brisbane as well.
So that's interesting to see. When you look at all the news that's been coming out in the media, people normally say, oh, okay, because of this pandemic and of COVID-19, that the prices, will probably be dropping, or people are waiting to see that, there might be some crash sales that might gain on. So that's not been happening. The sales have been strong.
Exactly. The sales have been strong. The market is picking up. The demand and supply is the problem at the moment. There's high demand of buyers, but not enough supplies on the market. We're still looking to have more listings on the market, so we can have those buyers going to their new homes.
So, my next question was going to be on the listings. So what is the situation on the listings? They're coming on the market, or what's the number of houses on the market as compared to pre-COVID?
The number of listings coming on the market is a little bit slow. Pre-COVID there was more supply in the market as well, but at the moment we are still experiencing the low number of properties coming on the market.
Okay, so when there is less number of properties coming on the market, you obviously need to attract more sellers. So what's GlobeNet doing to attract more sellers at this point in time?
As I mentioned last week, we have started a campaign. We're doing a gift of $5,000 for anyone who is listing through GlobeNet Realty. They will go into a draw, which the prize will be drawn in end of January after the properties have settled. So we're offering everyone who is coming to GlobeNet Realty to sell their property, they have got a chance to be in it to win $5,000.
That's excellent. So selling a property, your chance to win $5,000. Remember, you need to be in it to win it. So if you're going to list a property, you're going to list it with anyone anyway. Why don't you list it with the agents which has been most established in the area and very experienced, and also get a chance to win $5,000? That really makes sense to me. Well, right now, looking at the properties, as every week we highlight a property of the week. So do we have a property of the week this week that you like to discuss?
Yes, we have got a property at number 10 Danebank Place, which is on the market for offers over $480,000. We have got a few offers already on the property, but we are trying to get the maximum price for the owner. So we have got a slide or a small video of the property. So if you can display that video as well, thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, right now let's go to that property, the property of the week from GlobeNet Realty Boondu. Wonderful, it's looking very good. So right now, could you give us a very quick, what they say, if you're talking to someone in a lift and you have to describe that property, what would be the description?
Renovate and profit. I would like to mention that with a little bit of TLC, you can profit in that property. It's minutes to Najee College and airport and all other amenities. It's an exceptional buy in a brick home.
Very well said, and no wonder you are the agent, preferred agent in that area, because you know all the properties there. Well, right now let's move on and looking at all the updates. As we know, we are heading into spring. And for the tip for this week, every week we'll bring some tips for all our listeners, be you seller, rental. We haven't talked about rental, so maybe we'll do that next week. We'll do an update on the rental situations as well. So now that we are in spring, so what's your tips on, sellers for this type of the year?
Yes, we are in spring, and that's the most beautiful time of the year. We have got school holidays coming up, and a lot of people are receiving their tax refunds, and this is the best time to invest in properties. The maintenance of the properties is extremely important. We have found out a few properties where we have got sales on the property, but it's knocked down when the building and inspection has been done. Some properties have got termites or a lot of damages to the property. So we request all our sellers and all our landlords to maintain the property in a timely manner. So there's least inconvenience to the buyers and the renters as well, and you get a smooth sale.
So in terms of upkeep of the properties, what are the things that they probably need to look at?
We would recommend the owners to remove all dead branches from the trees, trim the yards, trim the gardens, and maintain the fencing and electrical works. If they can check all the electrical works, the power points, the ceiling fans, the air conditioners all cleaned. And the other thing is to clean the gutters, the roof, check the roofs are all good, no cracked tiles. Because of our severe weather here, there's a lot of cracked tiles happening as well. So yeah, clean the gutters. Please check the gutters that there are not plants growing or debris building up on the gutters. That's extremely important. And the other thing is the smoke alarms. The smoke alarms needs to be to the current standards. Have a qualified electrician to look at the smoke alarms. We have got few tradespeople who are qualified, who can go and check all the electricals, smoke alarms, and any other maintenance person you need. We have got all that in our record, in our maintenance team.
So GlobeNet Realty has a pool of tradespeople whom you use, and especially with the smoke alarms, it is very, very important. And now the latest other thing that's been come out has been the cords on roller blinds. and they need to be checked and maintained as well.
Yes, that is extremely important as well, because there was an episode a few years back. A child was strangled with that cord, so that law has come into effect a few years back, and you need the cords to be checked and tested as well. The smoke alarms people can do that as well. We have got those team of people who can go and check both the things at the same time.
So with the ever-changing regulations, there's so much that needs to be kept up to date, so much legislation around sort of things, and so much liability lies as well if you do not upkeep your property. So, for hassle-free management of the property, look no further than GlobeNet Realty. Well, so that people can plan their weekend or their way around the open houses. What are the open houses for GlobeNet Realty this week?
We have got open house. The first one is in Maramba Downs at 39 Brushbox Street. That is open from 9 to 9:30. The next one is a brand new listing, which I've got about hundreds of inquiries, which was just listed on yesterday actually. And we have got multiple inquiries on that, and that's open at 10 o'clock to 10:30. It's 88 Stanworth Road in Boondall. Ideal investment property or first home buyers property. It's listed for $399 plus, basically land value. It's got a large shed, 3 bedrooms, renovators delight again. Then the next one we have got is One Songbird Way, which has been reduced for urgent sale. It's open at 11 to 11:30. And the last one we have got in Callum Vale at 4 Windsor Court, and that's open from 1 to 1:30. And we are looking for offers for urgent sale on that as well.
So that's excellent. That's all the open houses, and if people need to, they can go on your website to look at the timings as well?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so just before we finish off, is there any other thing that you'd like to let our listeners know?
I would like to draw to all our sellers about the competition again. We have got that competition to win $5,000. If you list and sell the property with GlobeNet Realty, you go in for the draw to win $5,000. And we hope to have more listings so we can satisfy more of our buyers who are looking to buy, and they have been on our database for a few weeks. Thank you.
And that's wonderful that you have that promotion. So ladies and gentlemen, that has been the weekly roundup of real estate by our sponsors, GlobeNet Realty. So from next week, if you have any questions, any specific questions real estate related, we'd be happy to take those questions on here as well. So you can send them via our comment section, or you can even email them to us beforehand as well, sales@globenetrealty.net.au or .com.au. The radio is .net, but GlobeNet is .com. We'd like to take those questions head on here in there. So but right now it's time to go and look at the news in brief for this week. And the first news that we have is that Brendan Thomas has filed a federal court claim against false imprisonment. So, what happened there? Let's take a very quick look. And thank you so much to Usha Chandra for being on the show.
Thank you, Mesh.
You mentioned you did have ups and downs. What kept you going through the lower times?
I really just was thinking about my son a lot, and all the fighting was mainly for him. That I wanted to see him again, and didn't want to be deported because I wouldn't be able to see him. Yeah, so that's why we put up such a good fight. Yeah.
And can you also talk through that? I guess why fight so hard not to be deported?
Well, for starters, the Aboriginal heritage, where we come from, Goongarrie and that. It's a little bit hard, when you know where you come from, especially that to be in a situation like that. But I do understand there was laws and things in place for that. But yeah.
So that's his point of view there as well, because when you get taken in for more than 500 days in immigration detention, and when it is unlawful. So he's claiming $4.1 million from the government. Next up, we look at our Prime Minister Ezzy, the life update which we brought to you yesterday when he unveiled that energy plan.
Between clashes with state premiers over the past few weeks, the Prime Minister has been on a mission.
Today's a day of hope, and Australia needs hope, the world needs hope.
He's been trying to send out a message of hope about vaccines, and today, a message of hope about getting the economy going again.
And that's what our JobMaker plan for Australia's economic recovery is actually all about. Ensuring that businesses have the confidence in this very uncertain world to have a go and to get a go.
You'll be hearing a lot more of this sort of talk in the lead up to the federal budget in 3 weeks' time. The government wants to use the budget as a launching pad for economic recovery. And you will hear the PM use lots of words like security and sovereignty too. The coalition is making concerns about China part of its political message. These themes came together today in a long-signalled plan for energy security built on gas, which the government says can lower electricity prices and turbocharge recovery. The switch to gas pushes coal to one side, but equally keeps a polite distance from renewable energy. But what is most remarkable is the massive interventions in our energy markets being put forward by an ostensibly pro-market government. The largest of these is a threat to build a massive new taxpayer-funded power station in the New South Wales Hunter Valley.
Now, the Commonwealth Government would prefer not to step in. That is not our plan A. But nor will we shy away from taking action to protect consumers and support jobs.
This is actually a really unusual market intervention by a coalition government, and it just sends a signal of uncertainty to everyone who wants to invest.
Greg Bourne used to run BP Australasia and is now a councillor with the Climate Council.
The Australian energy market operator, they don't see any need for new gas until well out into sort of 2030 or 2035.
The government says it will get Snowy Hydro Corporation to build the power station if the private sector doesn't come up with a plan by next April to replace the 1,000 megawatt capacity of the Liddell coal-fired station, which is due to start closing in 2022. The Australian Energy...
So the onus is now on the private sector to come up with that matching energy deal. Well, right now, let's move on. And when we talk about, when we look at all these, our police, when we look at them and off duty, they are just like normal citizens anyway. The rule applies for anyone. So here's a clip of our West Australian police officer, Lachlan, as he crashes his car at a roundabout near Perth Airport. So let's take a quick look at that footage. So all the cars parked up there, the Heads rental car. Straight onto the back of the Heads. Well, as could be said that things happen, and a human is a human. So, this kind of things do happen. But right now, let's go to Victoria, where the police officer involved in head stomping incident, has been suspended, but with pay.
I form the view that it's an inappropriate use of force by a police member with regard to the kick or the stomp to the head of the man involved in that incident. I've also formed the view that the use of force in using a police vehicle with the man involved in that incident is concerning. I can say that yesterday Victoria Police suspended the member involved in the kick with pay, and that matter is now under criminal investigation. In regard to the use of the police vehicle, I can say that the driver of that vehicle has had their authority to drive a police vehicle withdrawn, and that matter is also subject to a criminal investigation.
So the matter is subject to criminal investigation, and of course he's been suspended, but with pay. And the news that clip that we saw of the Western Australia police officer, apparently he was drunk. So, we'll wait and see what kind of response we get on there. Well, right now, time to go to New South Wales.
Overnight, New South Wales had 7 cases of COVID. Importantly, 4 of these were in hotel quarantine, so 3 from overseas travellers and 1 from a returning traveller from Victoria, which means New South Wales only had 3 cases of community transmission, and 1 of which we're obviously making further investigations on, which I'll ask Dr. Chant to comment on. This is again a solid result. However, we are concerned about testing numbers. It was only 8,900 people or so who got tested in the last 24 hours, and we really need the community to stay vigilant and not be complacent. As we know, after the end of next week will be school holidays, and we really want to have a very low number of community transmissions ahead of school holidays, when we know families, and rightly so, will be travelling through all parts of New South Wales during that time, so mobility will be increasing and families will be moving all across the state. And so it's really important for us to keep testing rates high to make sure that we control the spread ahead of the school holidays, when we know many communities, many families will be interacting with each other, and the risk will be lower if we go into that period with a lower number of cases.
And of course, with the school holidays coming, and the testing needs to be high, and we really need to bring those numbers down, as we have seen a lot of restrictions being eased at the moment. But lately we have seen a lot of action by police, and these days the thing is you can't go anywhere, do anything without being noticed or without being videoed, or someone with the phone there would be covering that incident, and it will all get into the media. Well, right now we go to Lilydale Market Shopping Centre, where police confront a man with a knife. Not an easy task for the police force, I must say. Well, right now, from that clip, we go to Western Australia once again, where Mark McGowan says Western Australia's top cap on international arrivals could be lifted. And as we have seen that, the flights are slowly starting to resume, when we're starting to get, Australian citizens back into the country, and of course, citizens of other countries departing as well. So let's hear from Mark McGowan.
Western Australia is happy to work with the Commonwealth on this. We currently take the 2nd highest number of any state. So New South Wales takes the most. Western Australia takes the 2nd largest amount of international Australians returning home of any state in the country. And I indicated to the Prime Minister we're happy to work on it. I just make the point as well, we currently have nearly 2,000 people in our hotels in quarantine. What I'd like to do is work with the Commonwealth on them standing up some of their facilities. So if the Commonwealth could organise some of their defence bases, some of their defence assets, Christmas Island, obviously we would want to work with them to get those facilities up and operational to take Australians returning home so they could do their quarantine in those sorts of facilities. I'm very aware that all over Australia there are these sorts of assets, defence assets, immigration assets, those sorts of places that are not fully occupied, that the Commonwealth could use if they wanted to, and we're more than happy to cooperate with them to ensure that they can make those facilities available.
So if those facilities are made available by the Commonwealth, that would be good to see a collaboration between the states and the Commonwealth government. But right now, let's go to South Australia, where South Australia is going to relax its COVID-19 border restrictions with ACT.
I'm able to advise that effective midnight tonight, the requirement to quarantine for 14 days will be lifted for people travelling between ACT and South Australia. New South Wales, the 14-day quarantine period will remain in force for the foreseeable future until such time as South Australian health experts are satisfied that the community transmission issues which are occurring in New South Wales have abated to the degree that we can allow that movement from New South Wales into South Australia without adversely impacting on the risk to the South Australian community from a public health point of view. So as of midnight tonight, people wishing to travel between the ACT and South Australia will be able to do so without having to quarantine when arriving in South Australia. They will be required to still fill in the pre-approval online, as with all other safe community transmission zones, and people will be required to declare that they have not been outside of a safe community transmission zone for the 14-day period prior to travelling into South Australia. This is our way of assuring as best as possible that those people travelling between South Australia and other places have not exposed themselves unnecessarily to the risk of contracting COVID-19 and therefore bringing it into South Australia.
And that is a wonderful news there as well, if that can happen. Well, right now, let's go to overseas and look at some of the news that's been coming out. And we will look at US first up before we go to the other countries.
The fallout's been otherworldly. Red fire retardant splashed across a grey and black hellscape. Entire townships have been seared off the map.
I lost everything except what's in that bag. Everything. And I
the bushfires in California.
In California, dozens of fires continue to burn. The smoke haze is everywhere, and the governor has no time to debate the cause.
This is a climate damn emergency. This is real.
After being silent through most of the crisis, the president flew in, pointing solely to another factor.
We have to do a lot about forest management. Obviously, forest management in California is very important.
Officials briefed the president and tried in vain to convince him to trust the science.
If we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay, it'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
On the Gulf Coast tonight, residents are preparing for the second hurricane in 2 weeks.
I'm very concerned. When they say evacuate, we have to go, and I leave.
Presidential challenger Joe Biden says it's all connected.
Floods are wiping out suburban neighborhoods in the Midwest. Hurricanes are imperiling suburban life along our coast.
And he says climate change is yet another crisis mishandled by the president.
You give a climate arsonist 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised if we have more America ablaze?
Joe Biden has pledged an historic $4.7 trillion over 4 years to battle climate change. Donald Trump has wound back regulations aimed at curbing emissions and promised to open up Alaska's pristine wilderness to oil and gas. The president's also served notice to quit the Paris Climate Accord, which he'll be able to do on November 4, the day after the election. David Lipson, ABC News, Washington.
So that's news coming out of Washington, and as we know that we have had two sides, that story sounds very, very familiar, similar to what happened here after the forest fires when, the climate change been blamed and the greening coming out as well, the forest management and the ways of the first people of the land, who knew how to manage the undergrowth, all those things comes in. Now, when we talk on climate change, and again, a big topic which we can talk about so much, the human intervention, what we have contributed to that, and what is natural evolution. All those things need to be taken into account as well. Very interesting debate. Of course, we can look at both sides of the things. Of course, many times the Greenish and the protesters take to the street, and sometimes they're doing exactly opposite to what they are preaching or they're protesting against. Well, right now, let's take a very quick look at the events that are taking place, and then we will do a summation of today. As we know, many of these functions and events will be taking place online. So, make sure that you log in or register for the webinars that are taking place. And slowly, as the restrictions ease, we might see some more, incidents taking place directly. There's a lot of functions and events that are taking place as well virtually. So, log on to our website and you will get an updated version. Of course, do subscribe to our EDM, which is the electronic data of the mail, which goes out every Friday, and be updated with all the upcoming functions and events that are taking place, either virtually or in person. And if you have any function that you'd like to discuss or any topic that you'd like to talk about, we'd like to welcome you on the show. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'd like to leave you with the last story for today, is bringing Australians back home before Christmas. Let's take a look at that story, as many Australians are still stranded overseas.
Little Madeline is just one of the many babies born during the pandemic. In her case, in France. It's been a tricky juggling act for her Australian mum, Claire Carmody, who's trying to come home with her French husband. Claire's due to start a new job in Brisbane in October.
Being a first-time mum, having no sleep and all the things that first-time mums go through, but doing that alone and doing that with the uncertainty of when the hell am I going to get home? And in a couple of weeks, we're going to be homeless. What's going to happen with my job? All of that stress, that really living out of suitcases, all of that stress, it's compounding.
They faced hefty costs and several flight cancellations.
Get ready? We're going to go. So borrowing money from family or crowdfunding is the option. The government's offered $2,000 for flights, $2,000 loans. That's not going to do it, and it's not going to get the thousands of Australians home.
Sam Stringer faced her own challenges travelling from Belgium to Australia to see her ailing father, who has final stage emphysema. She'd been working and living with her partner in Brussels for the past 3.5 years.
It's actually been quite, as you can imagine, a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I didn't have a choice. My father was very ill. My mother called me and said, I don't think it's possible for you to stay any longer. You know, he may pass before you get home. I really was concerned that he would die before I was able to come back, or that my mother would have to, she wouldn't be able to cope with looking after him.
Flights were booked out, and it took 6 weeks before Sam was able to fly out on a near-deserted plane back to Sydney.
Unless I wanted to pay for a business class upgrade of, you know, 5,000, 6,000 euro, I had to really just hold on to the hope that I would get my economy flight.
Once home, she faced another 2 weeks in hotel quarantine. She applied for an exemption to visit her father on compassionate grounds, but New South Wales Health rejected her request for public health reasons. A second request to leave quarantine early after testing negative to COVID was also knocked back.
I feel that I should have been able to quarantine at home, with some safeguards, of course.
New South Wales Health maintains it balances the need of returned Australians and community safety.
My mother was on verge of, you know, a breakdown, and my father went into hospital the day before I actually got out of quarantine.
The more than 25,000 Australians overseas are now caught in a growing debate about who's responsible for helping them return home, with the federal opposition calling for the government to arrange charter flights to ease their re-entry. But it's the National Cabinet which has agreed to restrict the number of international arrivals.
So there you go, the number of arrivals will be restricted and calls on the responsibility, who does the responsibility ultimately lie with. As we know, many countries around the world are trying to get their nationals back to their countries. But of course, I think people have to pay for their flights and other things like that. So some of the cost that needs to be borne by the people who are really willing to travel. As we know, compassionate reasons on those, on the face value, yes, and on a humanitarian grounds, yes, permission should be granted. But then when you look at the public safety and the rules and regulations, that's when the equation changes a little bit. As we know, there's a case that we are dealing with directly through our community, and hopefully the person in concern might be able to fly to US in a few days' time. We've been working very closely with DFED. So there are many cases that happen behind the scenes which we cannot discuss. But when you look at the points that are made for those cases, yes, they do in principle see that, okay, because of the nature of the case, that yes, on that reason, on compassionate reasons, yes, they should be allowed to go and see their parents, or they need to be allowed to go back to their countries. But then also we have to look at the restrictions and of course the public health safety at large, which is very, very important, which is of paramount importance, I would like to add here as well. So, you have to weigh up all those things, and it's quite easy to, point a finger at the authorities and say, of course, they didn't do the right thing, and you start protesting and other things like that. There are rules and regulations and things that they need to work with, and of course, many, cases are in many times unique, and they have been given permission. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'd like to say goodbye until tomorrow. It's been wonderful having your company. It's always good to see you. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. Stay safe. Stay very, very safe.